Last week, you had names like Saquon Barkley, Jaden Daniels, Jordan Addison, and Trey McBride go off in fantasy football. They helped people win their weeks. Well, in today's video, I'm bringing you 10 names that should do the same in week 13, 10 names that should go nuclear. And we are starting off with Jorge Pickens, George Pickens, the man himself. I don't care that he's in the stands fighting people. I don't care. I want my wide receiver to have a little attitude on top, all right? He faces the Cincinnati Bengals, which is the 5th best matchup for your wide receivers. We have seen the Bengals get torched to a crisp pretty much the entire season. Terry McLaurin had 20 points. Deontay Johnson, when he was a Panther, had a touchdown over 21 points. Zay Flowers had over 100 yards. Devonta Smith had a touchdown, one of his few very good games this year. Jacoby Myers had over 100 yards. Ladd McConkey recently had over 18 points, over 100 yards. And George Pickens has been a superstar with Russell Wilson at quarterback. If you look at 5 games with Russell Wilson, the 6 games without was with Justin Fields. You can see the in split and out of split. So in split, meaning with Russell Wilson, he's averaging almost 16 points per game, over 82 receiving yards per game. He's been so much better with Russ, who is just the king of that moon ball lately. Pickens, by the way, since week 7+, which is when Russell Wilson started, from that time period onwards, he is averaging more points per game than Justin Jefferson. Yeah, George Pickens is averaging more points per game than Justin Jefferson. It's true. He's averaging more points per game than A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Drake London, and Malik Neighbors. And the Bengals should make this a game in which the Steelers are going to be able, or are going to need to throw the ball rather, right? I mean, the Bengals offense is on fire. They should be able to put up points, and it's a healthy over-under 46.5 points, and the Steelers are underdogs. So even Vegas agrees that this should be a game where George Pickens is needed for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm predicting 7 catches, 100 yards, and at least 17 PPR points. Moving on. Look, he might be small in stature, but he is big time for fantasy football. Bucky Irving at the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, as you guys know by now, the best matchup in fantasy football for the running back position. Remember, Chase Brown had 2 tuds over 23 points. DeAndre Swift had over 120 yards, 20 points. Bijan Robinson averaged over 6 yards per carry, 25 points and 2 touchdowns. In the same game, Tyler Algier against the Panthers had 19 PPR points. Alvin Kamara has had 2 games over 22 PPR points. The Panthers defense right now gives up the most rushing yards per game, the 3rd most total yards per game, and the most points to opposing offenses. They're the only team giving up over 30 points per game to opposing offenses. And last week was big. I don't know if you noticed this. Yes, Rachaad White had a good game. Bucky Irving had a good game, but it was the first week that Bucky Irving led running backs for the Bucs in snaps, 52% of the snaps, and touches. He had 18 touches. Rachaad White had 13 touches to 18 for Bucky Irving. You know, the game script might have played a part there with the Giants not scoring any points in the first half, but the Bucs are almost a touchdown favorite heading into the week, which should allow them to establish the run effectively. 6.5 point favorites and a 46.5 point over under. They're actually tied for the 3rd highest implied team point total on the week with 26 total points. So Bucky should have more than enough opportunities to shine on the ground and through the air. I'm predicting at least 15 touches, 90 plus all-purpose yards, and 16 plus PPR points. All right, this takes me to my spicy hot bold take of the week, and I don't think there's going to be many people who like this, all right? Because the people who own this player, they are drowning right now, and they are asking for someone to get them out of the water. Well, I believe Marvin Harrison Jr. has a blow-up week against the Vikings secondary. He's going to catch a touchdown, get 20 PPR points, and help the Cardinals beat the 9-2 Vikings on the road. I know it's been up and down, guys, but we are due for a blow-up game. This is the 2nd best matchup in fantasy football for wide receivers, so it should be wheels up, right? Best matchup outside of, I think it's the Jags. I can't remember who's number 1, but the Vikings are number 2. The Vikings in recent weeks, just in recent weeks, I mean, we can go back further, but just in recent weeks, Amon-Ra had over 100 yards and 25 points. Puka had over 100 yards. DJ Moore, who was one of my starts of the week last week, if you remember, all right? So maybe this is helping you gain some faith in this. Nobody wanted to start DJ Moore. I said, hey, it could be a really good game versus the Vikings. 7 catches, 106 yards, a touchdown, 27 PPR points. And then in the same game, even Keenan Allen had a day, his best day on the entire season. The way to beat the Vikings is through the air. They give up the 5th most passing yards per game and the fewest rushing yards per game. So it might not be a very good day for James Conner, if you get my drift. It's, I know it's been up and down with Marvin Harrison Jr., but this feels like a blow-up game in my opinion. When people have counted him out before he stepped up, remember week 10 versus the Jets, week 8 versus Miami, I think he has at least 6 receptions, 70 yards. He gets into the end zone with the touchdown and 20 PPR points. Let's see. We'll find out. It's supposed to be a hot take, isn't it? All right, my 4th and 5th player, it's a little combo we're rocking with again in back-to-back weeks. Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey, and they face the Atlanta Falcons, all right? My wide receiver, 22, and quarterback, 8 on the week. Atlanta is the 5th best matchup, for your quarterbacks, and they are actually, the Falcons are the best matchup for your wide receiver. That's actually changed recently. I mean, their secondary is kind of breaking down. In their last 4-game stretch, okay? Let's look at quarterbacks first. In their last 4-game stretch, Baker Mayfield had 3 touchdowns, over 340 yards, and 29 PPR points. Derek Carr, without most of his best players, without Rashid Shaheed, without Chris Olave, he went out there and had 23.5 points. Bo Nix had his best game as a pro. Just recently, 300 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, over 36 fantasy points. And if you look at Justin Herbert, even beyond this matchup, they have been letting him kind of fling the ball a little bit more recently. From weeks 1 to 7, we're going to compare his usage compared to weeks 8 to 12 because they've really kind of let Justin Herbert loose. You can see the passing attempts go up. You can see the passing yards per game go up. And these are all averages, right? But what I want you to look at is the rushing yards per game. From weeks 1 to 7, Herbert was averaging about 6 rushing yards per game. That's up to over 35. That gives you such a safe floor. His touchdowns per game almost double, and his fantasy points per game go from about 12 to over 21 per game. He has been so much better, and it is a great matchup for him to exploit. Now, with Ladd McConkey, again, wide receivers are going off against this team too. It's a quarterback wide receiver combo. Devonta Smith, one of his few good games this year. Rashee Rice went off against him before he went down. Mike Evans had 2 tuds, over 23 points. Deontay Johnson, again, as a Panther, almost 20 points. DK Metcalf had almost 20 points. I will do the same exact comparison, okay? Ladd McConkey, weeks 1 to 7 versus weeks 8 to 12, because we are seeing these guys build a real synergy. Oddly enough, his targets went down, but the receptions went up. Again, the synergy is starting to be built. They're being more efficient with every target. His yards almost double. And his fantasy points go from 10.4 PPR points to over 16. This is going to be, in my opinion, a lethal combo down the stretch. I'm predicting Justin Herbert, 300 plus all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. And Ladd McConkey's going to have at least 8 targets, 80 yards, and 17 plus PPR points. All right. It's time for a bounce back. Do you believe in redemption? I'm speaking this one into life because I own this player in the Flock League. It's time for a Jonathan Taylor blow-up game. It has been hell owning Jonathan Taylor. I think that could change this week. He faced the Patriots, which is the 6th best matchup for your running backs. If you guys remember back to the Jordan Mason days, he had 160 total yards against this defense, 5 yards per carry, and 24 PPR points. Joe Mixon, of course, it's Joe Mixon, but he averaged 7.8 yards per carry against them. And then Dameon Pierce, the backup, came in that same game, averaged almost 10 yards per carry, got into the end zone as well. Tank Bigsby's best game as a pro happened against him. Tony Pollard had over 150 total yards and 18 PPR points. And the utilization for Jonathan Taylor is still there. This is why I can't give up hope just yet. If you compare him against some of the other running backs who are workhorses, like your James Cook, your James Conner, your Derrick Henrys, Jonathan Taylor still has that utilization that should lead to fantasy points. I'm predicting in this game 20 plus touches because I think they'll be in control of the game, 100 plus all-purpose yards, and 16 plus PPR points. Let's be honest, if you own Jonathan Taylor, if you got 16 points this week, don't pretend like you wouldn't be happy. I would be happy, all right? All right, the 7th player we'll look at, another running back, Chase Brown, downtown Chase Brown. Steelers are a top 10 matchup for your running backs. Recently, Breece Hall had over 26 points, over 140 all-purpose yards. Tyrone Tracy averaged over 7 yards per clip against them, over 23 PPR points. Austin Eckler had 2 tuds. Nick Chubb had 2 tuds. And Chase Brown without Zach Moss is turning into a superstar. Without Zach Moss, he's averaging almost 21 carries per game, over 7 targets per game, over 130 all-purpose yards, and averaging almost 23 PPR points. Again, without Zach Moss, the guy is thriving. The Bengals are in a must-win scenario. Right now, they are 10th in the AFC. They have a 13% chance of getting to the playoffs. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because in those fourth down situations, they are going to try to extend drives all game long. They will do whatever they can to score. They'll go for the 2-point conversion. They'll go for it on fourth down. They will do anything possible to win this game. I'm predicting 22 plus touches for him, 120 all-purpose yards, and 20 PPR points for Chase Brown. All right. How about my tight end start of the week? That is Hunter Henry versus the Colts. Indianapolis is currently the fourth best matchup for your tight end. We've seen Cole Kmet have a huge game, almost 26 PPR points. He was great. Pat Fryermuth, the week after, I believe, had almost 17 PPR points. Jonnu Smith recently had almost 100 yards, 23 PPR points. And the Colts defense this year is top 6 in passing yards and total yards allowed per game to opposing offenses. I think Hunter Henry has a very safe floor this week. 6 catches, 80 yards, 14 plus PPR points. I can't really predict a touchdown because that Pats offense isn't very good. But like we said earlier with Jonathan Taylor, I think the Colts will be up. The Patriots are going to have to throw the ball from behind. I think Hunter Henry is going to be that safety blanket. The 9th player that we're excited about this week, James Cook. Jimmy. Let Jimmy James Cook versus the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers, man, it's been a weird year, but they are a top 8 matchup for running backs, which sounds strange to say, but you know, in recent weeks, guys, in the last couple of weeks, Rachaad White, right? He had a great game, 19 points, a touchdown. Bucky Irving in the same game, almost 90 yards, a touchdown, 17 PPR points. Josh Jacobs just had 3 touchdowns against them last week. And right now, the Bills are 6.5-point favorites, which should allow them to establish the run in the second half and, you know, deep into the fourth quarter. And they also they're tied for the 3rd highest implied team point total with the Bucs, like we talked about earlier, with 26 points. James Cook, should have an opportunity to get into the end zone. I'm predicting at least 20 touches, 75 plus all-purpose yards, and over 16 PPR points. And the last player I'm excited to play, now I can't tell you at the time of recording this if he will actually play or not because he's done with a hamstring injury, but if he's out there, go ahead and fire up your Devonta Smiths. I know it's not been good. I know it's been bad for Devonta Smith, but go ahead and fire him up this week. He faces the Baltimore Ravens. This is going to be one of the most exciting games of the week. Ravens, Eagles, and it is the 3rd best matchup for your wide receiver against the Baltimore Ravens. In the last 7 games or so, you've had Terry McLaurin get 2 tuds, Cedric Tillman get 2 tuds, Cortland Sutton over 100 yards and a tud. George Pickens had almost 90 yards, no touchdown, but still about 17 PPR points. And we know Jamar Chase destroyed these guys. Over 48 points is what he was averaging in his 2 games against them this year. The Ravens defense, kind of like the Vikings, you want to throw on them. They give it the 2nd most passing yards per game and the 2nd fewest rushing yards per game. It's a high over under 50.5 points, the highest spread of the week. I think we'll see a ton of fancy points in this one, and I believe Devonta Smith will be an important part of it. 6 catches, 80 yards, a touchdown, over 20 PPR points. We're getting a little bold with Devonta Smith here at the end. I just think they're going to need him, man. This should be a high-scoring affair. Plenty of people should get theirs. Hey, I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor. Go ahead and hit that like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like our content. And here's what I'll say. If you have a tough start-sit decision this week or a fantasy question or you want a team review, check out the pinned comment down below where you can reach us at any time on the Flock Fantasy website. If you don't have an account there already, then you can create one for free with the promo code LAND, L-A-N-D. That will get you the My Teams feature for free, the expert consensus rankings for free, and the trade calculator for free. I appreciate y'all for joining. Hopefully you have a great week. Happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully, by the time you're watching this, you're with friends and family or you've got some plans. Appreciate you guys. Thankful for this community. Let's go get a win. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.